I'm always happy to come to Rotary and Rotaract meeting. I think that you people represent the best of the best in the sector of making life better. So I'm always quite happy to be here with you. I think I have been asked to come and speak about fundraising made simple. And I have to say that I'm one of those people who is suffering from this thing that I call Zoom fatigue. I'm not a big fan of Zoom meetings. I generally prefer to see people eye to eye, and I think it is a response to the PTSD of being locked away. In part also is because of the fact that I cannot see you. I cannot, I have no idea, whether you are listening or whether some of you have gone to make tea while I speak. So speaking as a talking head is always difficult. However, I shall try and make do with what we have. I think before I start, I'm just gonna put my screen so that I can see the many names and faces. And I'm just gonna ask you to put your hand up if you are in the nonprofit industry. Would you please put your hand up if you're in the nonprofit industry, in whichever, in terms of your day-to-day lives? I have Phyllis, Peter, Polly, I think, Lydia, Fabian. Does it look? It looks like it's very few people. Fine. How many people are in business? Self-employed? Only 4 people? I think I've counted just about 4 or 5 people. So I'm assuming that the rest would be people who are in employment. Very good. I think today I am going to come and just tell you 5 things. I'll hope that you leave this place with 5 things. I started working in my career started in business, where I was working as an entrepreneur, and I have been a social entrepreneur for a long time. And then I went to work for government, and then I moved to work in the nonprofit industry. In the nonprofit industry, I started off in employment, where I was head of marketing for a nonprofit called Kenya Community Development Foundation. And as head of marketing and partnerships, my job was to raise or lead the organization to raise a hefty amount. At the time, they had been given a grant by Ford Foundation that they needed to raise about 150 million shillings in 2 years. And the requirement was that they must raise it from Kenyans. So from Kenyan companies and from Kenyan people, meaning that they couldn't go to another foundation or something to raise money from there. And so we had to be very creative. We had to make sure that we simplify our story and make sure that we raise that money. So it was quite a tough effort. I'm glad to say that we succeeded. And so some of the stories that I will tell you today will arise from that experience. Thereafter, I started the Open Institute, and as you heard, I started it with almost no money. And at the time that we started, we had a staff of 5. Initially, we were incubated by another organization, and we had funding to start. but that other organization ran away with the funding. So we were left in debt and having to start from the very bare minimum. And so some of the points that I'm going to give you are going to relate to that as well. Point number one, you have to start with a genuine mission. If I meet so many people who meet me and they start having conversations with me about funding, instead of having a conversation with me about what their mission is. I hear too many people who are in the nonprofit industry because funding exists. Unfortunately, that's not a real way to work in the nonprofit industry, and you will not go very far. I know I have even a relative of mine who, as soon as she hears that somebody is from a foundation or from a funder perspective, the first question they ask is, what do you fund? And the reason why they ask that question first is because of the fact that they want to then structure their organizations to be relevant to whatever it is that you fund. So the same organization is true for water, it is true for women issues, it is true for period poverty, it is true for health, it is true for agriculture, it is true for everything. It can be a value system that you go by. What you have to do is that you have to start with something that you believe in, something that you would do whether or not you're funded, something that you would fight to achieve whether or not you're funded. The people who have achieved the biggest funding are people who were so committed to whatever it is that they were doing that they started regardless of whether or not they were funded. When we started at the Open Institute, we had no funding, but we were very passionate about the question of transparency, the question of accountability, building systems so that government can be more accountable. I have always been passionate, and my co-founder as well. We've always been very passionate about trying to figure out how can we support governments to be more transparent. How do we make sure that they can tell us what it is that they're doing with our money, what it is that they're doing with the resources that we have given them, and how do we make sure that citizens then have a voice to direct government? So we were convinced from the get-go that that was what our mission in life is. My biological father used to say that everybody has a piece of the world that they take a bite out of. And for me, transparency and accountability is the place where, the world can take a bite. And that's a bit of the world I can take a bite out of the world's problems and try and solve. You also have your own thing. It can be education, it can be mangrove, it can be health, it can be whatever it is. But you have to choose one thing that you know that this is the thing that you do regardless of whether there is funding or not. It's the thing that you take your salary and put in there. When we were starting the Open Institute, and in fact for a few years after, about 5 years after, we were funding it directly from our pockets. We would get small amounts in terms of funding here and there. Maybe we'll get like 500,000 shillings here or 1,000,000 shillings there. I think the first year in total we raised 2 million shillings for a very big mission. So it wasn't covering even salaries, it wasn't covering anything. And I was so convinced about this that at one point I even took my car and gave it to Shylock so that I could be able to handle projects. That is how committed I was to the mission, which means I was risking even something that was an asset to me at the time. Thankfully, it has worked out. We have been able to grow the organization significantly. So starting out with a genuine mission is the bottom floor. It's the first thing from the get-go. If you are not genuine, if you do not believe in what it is that you're trying to do, I guarantee it, you may raise 1 or 2 shillings, but you will never be long-term sustainable. It won't work. The second thing that I would like you to take home with you is that the people you're fundraising from are people. Often they are called donors, they are called funders. They come from some of these large organizations, the UN, the World Bank, and so on. And we assign, or Safaricom Foundation, and we assign the premium of the brand to the people. So because you're talking to Kags or Kags of UN or that you have for the brand that they're coming from, and you forget that you're dealing with a human being. Human beings like to be entertained. Human beings like to speak in simple language. Human beings like to engage with people directly. Human beings enjoy a cup of tea or a drink or whatever. Human beings are basic. And so if you are going to be fundraising, then you can't treat the person that you're fundraising from as if they're not human. Also, human beings know when they're being lied to. They can tell when you're not being genuine. They can tell when you're being disingenuous. And so the advice that I generally give to people is that whatever information you're giving out about your project, however you're going to sell it, make sure that you are speaking to a human being and not to a brand, not to an organization. Don't speak to the UN or to Ford Foundation or to whatever. Speak to the person that is directly in front of you. They can tell when you're being genuine and they can connect with you. And the more they connect with you, they will support your efforts. Most importantly, is money is given to human beings, not to organizations. It is because of Peter and my friendship with him that I came here. If I was going to support Rotaract, for example, it would be because Pesh is president that I might say, okay, I know Pesh, I know her values, I know what she's like. If she talks to me, then I might decide to support the activities. But it can't be that you send me, I support the organization just because of the fact that it has a big brand. That's not how it works. The way that it works is that you'll find that most organizations are supported because of the fact that there's somebody, a human being, that the funders connect with. I think there are many organizations where you find that yesterday Peter was the person who was leading the place and the organization was flush with cash. And then Peter retired and went, to do other things. And somebody else came in, say, I'm just using a name, Agnes came in and is leading that organization. And suddenly, because she doesn't have the kind of relationships that Peter had built, because she doesn't have the reputation that he had built, does not have the personal brand that he had built, the organization then starts to struggle from a financial perspective. That is usually because of the fact that money goes to people, not to organizations. So the more you become a storyteller, the more you are the sort of person that has a reputation that people can trust, that has a value system that people can trust, then the more you can be able to raise on behalf of your mission. Now, you notice that I'm saying mission more than I'm saying organization, because people also don't give money to people who don't have missions. So it is important that you find your own mission and figure out what it is that you stand for as a person, that you communicate it and repeat it and you're convinced about it, then you'll convince me and I'll give you something, or Bill Gates will give you something, or any other donor will give you something. One of the biggest fundraising stories that I'm currently really enjoying is the story of the American elections. While Joe Biden was still running, it was interesting to me how lackluster the Democrats were. But the moment he stepped down and Kamala came back on, she seems to have re-energized the party. And within a space of 24 hours, they were able to raise $81 million. Like, it just came out of the woodwork, and people were donating their $10, their $20, their $50, their $100 until it reached 81 million. Even the big donors, the Disneys of this world and so on, now came out of the woodwork because of the fact that they now had a candidate that they believe in. People give to people. People don't give to organizations. They were Democrats. They believed in the Democratic Party. They believed in the democratic principles. But because they didn't have the right person at the helm, they were not going to go support the party. I think the third thing that I want to tell you that is related to the first two points is you have to be a really good storyteller. You have to be able to tell stories of the things that you're trying to achieve. You have to be able to tell stories of why you're doing what you're doing. And stories usually are about people. They're not about things. So the stories, like any good movie, it has a protagonist, it has an antagonist, it has obstacles, it has problems, and then it has victory or it has failure. But it's a story. It has to grip a person's mind. So you have to figure out which story it is that you're telling to illustrate the challenges that you're dealing with. Recently, I met this young lady who is working on the question of period poverty, and she has been working for a while, as an individual, sewing the pads, the reusable pads, and distributing. So she saves up, she buys the materials, she goes and sews them herself, and then she goes and distributes them in schools and in different places. And she's extremely passionate about that work. The only thing that she was doing is that she was talking a lot more about period poverty as a concept, and less about the girls that she was impacting and the people that she was meeting, the troubles that they were facing, and so on. And so we worked with her, and she started talking more about what the challenges that she's dealing with. She started talking about, and she even would talk about, human beings. She'd say, I'm doing this because I want to help Janet, who is 13, who has started her periods, whose parents cannot afford to buy sanitary towels, who who does not have access, who is in danger of receiving 50 bob from that border guy who likes her, and therefore she will have to pay that back in a way. So I want to help Janet to achieve this. And by telling the story and painting a picture of the kind of challenges that the people she's helping are going through, then she was able to get support, and she's increasingly getting more and more support. So it is important that you become a storyteller. It is important that you can paint a strong picture of the people that you're helping. So your mission has to be humanized, and it has to you have to breathe life into it as much as possible. Biggest mistake that a lot of people make is they focus so much on the data and the facts, they forget to tell the story. Data and facts are supposed to support a story that you're telling, and it's not the other way around. So sometimes, even if you're talking about one of the projects that I know you folks are passionate about is the mangrove trees by the river. Even when that is the story, you have to be able to connect it to the communities that are there. You have to be able to connect it to how it is impacting our world. Part of the reason why things like climate change has had such difficulty in terms of raising money for it is because of the fact that people can't quite see, they can't quite connect with how it affects me. Yes, so the world is burning up. Yes, the oceans are warming up, but I don't see it. I go to the beach, I didn't see warm ocean. So how do I know that it impacts me? So being able to tell stories and connecting it to everyday life and human life is really important. So not just being overly technical and overly scientific, so to speak. And then the final thing I want to leave with you is in everything that you're doing, be aggressively transparent and be aggressive. For me, the star of my recent the person who I give the most flowers lately in respect to this is this young lady who was helping folks who are hurt or who died during the Gen Z protests a couple of months ago. A lot of money was sent to the Mchanga, which only she was in control of. And she was able to make sure that regularly she was updating and she was able to account for every single coin that was spent. Even if you spend that money paying yourself as a salary, please make sure that we know that the money that we contributed, there is 10 bob that went to buying you milk and bread. Make sure that there's a certain level of transparency in terms of what you have done with that money. The more proactively transparent you are, the better it is that you are. A lot of people worry about transparency because of and accountability because of the fact that sometimes you're worried that haters will do their work and they're going to hate. But haters are supposed to hate, and they're supposed to say that whatever it is, they're supposed to say that you didn't do your work. That is their job. Your job is to make sure that every single cent that you ever receive from anyone, every single resource that you ever receive from anyone, you account for it and you're very transparent about it. In a very aggressive way. So you're very proactively transparent about it. If you achieve those few things that I've mentioned to you, I know that you will be successful because those are the same tricks that I have used over the years. I have remembered that I'm speaking to people, not to organizations. I have remembered that money comes to me as an individual. And therefore, even though I am representative of my organization, the money is coming because I am in that organization. And so my value system, how I engage with people and so on and so forth, I've had to be very consistent about it. And then after that, I have remembered that I need to tell stories and they need to be relatable stories. And finally, I have tried to make sure that I've tried to make sure that I'm very transparent and accountable. Now, story time. When I was working at KCDF and we were trying to raise the 150 million, a couple of things we had to do. I found an organization, they were already trying to raise this money for about 2 years before then, but they were very technical with how they were speaking. So one of the ideas that they had come up with was to have a golf tournament so that they can attract the high net worth folks to give towards this mission. One of the programs that KCDF had at the time was what we call an ECD program, an early childhood development program, that was providing daycare services to women in rural areas so that they can go and work and get money for themselves while their children are being educated and taken care of and so on and so forth. What we had eventually, after I went and sat and really bothered the program people, I came to learn that early childhood development, the program was really about daycare, but they never used to say daycare. They would talk about all these very technical things. So by translating it into real English, I was able to then explain in simple terms that for 250 shillings, you could support a child in a rural area to get daycare for a full week. This is the 250 shillings that you take at Java for coffee. This is the 250 shilling beer that you take. That, if you was to sacrifice that, would take care of a child to have daycare the whole week so that the mom can go and work. That child will be fed, That child will have toys to play with, will have books to read, and will have a caregiver that will keep them safe. I told that exactly what I've said to you right now. I told that, I think I was invited on Jeff Koinange's bench. If you can find the video, it's online. And as soon as I told that story, that weekend that show ran, we raised 10 million shillings. That's one example. Another example is when we were trying to fundraise for the same golf tournament, we went to speak to some of the corporates. And the program that the golf tournament was trying to raise money for was the Ustawi program, which was a food program. And the food program that they had was supposed to be supporting farmers throughout the value chain. And the value chain for farming is 5 things, really. It is thinking about water, it is thinking about inputs, it is thinking about the process of planting, taking care, tilling, and so on and so forth, or of growing food. It is thinking about storage, and it is thinking about markets. 5 things. And so when we went to speak to the corporates who don't usually have time to listen to many, many stories, and we told them these 5 things, they were able to then see how they can support the program. And I remember that at the end of my presentation, one corporate that these guys had gone to previously several times said, oh, you know, before you guys came and talked to us, but we didn't understand what you were saying. But because we don't want to look stupid, we would nod and say, yes, okay. And then we'd say, we'll get back to you. And we never, of course, get back to you. Now we understand what it is that you're doing. Here's 5 million, Bob. What I'm trying to say here is the simpler your story, the more you realize you're talking to human beings, the more you realize that if you're talking to, in fact, the biggest test I tell people is if you're talking to me in a way that you would not talk to your friends, if you're talking to me in a way that you would not talk in your everyday life, then there's a problem. Because obviously I may not understand what you're saying because you're speaking in technical language. And if I don't understand what you're saying, I might not have the humility to tell you, man, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't understand what you're saying. A lot of times, especially if you're sounding intelligent, like I know one of you, I listened to you speak the other day, and I was like, "Wah, this is a person who knows Kizungu." I might not say that I don't understand the Kizungu you're talking about. Well, what I will do is I will nod, and I'll say, "Yes, indeed, very important, very important." And then after that, I'll let you go, and I'm to support whatever it is that you want. So speak simply, tell a story, make sure that everything you say, everything you write, every blog post, every social media post, people connect with it. People connect with your mission. I guarantee they will support you. So I wish you all well. I think that's all I had for you. I'm happy to take questions. I don't have my glasses on, so if somebody is chatting and they would like, if somebody writes a question on chat, somebody would have to read them to me. But back to you, Peter.
Okay, thank you so much, Kags. Indeed, you have done. You've kept it really simple. Yeah, thank you so much. I think at this juncture, we'd like to invite questions. If you have a question, you can type it on the chat. If you want to speak, please raise up your hand, because we can able to see you and pick you to be able to ask your question. Also, we have a link on the chat. Please make a point of registering. We'd like to know who attended this meeting. At least you can know how much you're able to, how far or how many people are able to reach it with this training. Yes, please bring the questions. Bring the questions. Bring the questions. Now we have some few minutes to go, and we'd like to use them the best way possible. Even as we wait for questions, I'd like also to appreciate the various clubs that are here today. We have 25 total clubs represented. This is quite good. You have Eldoret, you have Langata, you have Meningai, you have people from my own space. These are friends of Malindi, you have Meningai, you have Nairobi Central. Buying time for us to be able to get the courage to to ask questions. I can see Vanessa has raised her hand. So Vanessa, please shoot. I'm not so sure.
Kunanga Network. Vanessa Chebet from the
Okay.
Rotax Club of Eldoret, and I'm really glad to be here. Manipata. So, my
Yes, I
question
tunakupata
is,
vizuri.
what would you? Huh?
Tunakupata. Please continue.
Okay. Oh, so my question is, what would you say somebody should include in an elevator pitch? Ile siku yenye unapatana na your potential funder for a project for the first time, and you don't even have a lot of time to speak to them. You just have like a window. What should you pack in that small window of opportunity? Yeah. Thank you.
Maybe we can take a couple of other questions, and then I'll take all of them together.
Okay, I think we. How about just let's go with this because okay. Yes, I see Sarah has raised her hand. Please, Sarah.
Hi and good evening, everyone. So my question is this: for clubs like ourselves, the road track clubs, where you want to ensure continuity and sustainability, and Kags is talking about we partners or sponsors giving to an individual. How then do you ensure that, like after my term as president, and I'm able to attract those sponsors and partners? How do I ensure that my successor is also able to achieve the same level of success? How do we equip other people with skills that we are able to acquire?
Okay. Number one, elevator speech. Your elevator pitch should have three most important things. What are you doing? What is the magic about what you're doing? And what is the impact that you're having? What are you doing? What's the magic? Like, why should I care? What's the most interesting thing about what you're doing? If that can be told in the form of a story, even better. But basically it is what you're doing, what's the magic, and why are you doing it? If you can tell those three things, then your elevator pitch is strong. And sometimes I usually say it's important to know what your elevator pitch is in advance, so that then you know what it is that you're saying. So at the Open Institute, even when you ask us what it is that we do, we say, hi, my name is Kags. I work at the Open Institute. At the Open Institute, we do two things. Number one, we work on we promote responsive governments, which means that we help governments to have the tools, the policies, and the knowledge that they need to be transparent. And number two, we promote active citizenship, which means that we try and make sure that citizens all over the world can speak to their governments and provide them with guidance because they own the governments. If I end there, at least they know who I am and they know what it is that I do. And if I have created enough of an interest, then I can go a little bit further in elaborating on what it is that I'm doing. So that's the one about the elevator pitch. How do you make sure that if person A has built the relationships so that they can be able to fundraise for Rotaract, when they're moving on, person B, it is to make sure that you handhold person B and introduce them to the relationships that you've built long before you hand over. So if you already know who your successor is likely to be, then you begin to build those relationships. Go to the meetings with them. Go introduce them to your contacts and so on. Make sure that they also have visibility so that by the time you're actually doing your succession, then the person who's coming after is a familiar face. Because if nobody gives money to strangers. Back to you.
Thank you. There's no more question on the chat, so if anyone has a question, can just raise up your hand and we'll pick them up and allow them to ask. I can see Loja has lifted his hands. Yes, Loja.
Okay, mine is to tell you kuna question kwa chat. Check on it. There's a question on the chat.
Maybe you can read it, Loja, because I don't have my glasses. I can't read them.
Okay,
Yes, Loja,
the
please
question
do
is
so.
the question is, if you ain't a storyteller, how do you acquire that?
Everybody is a storyteller. Everybody is a storyteller. And because of the fact that a lot of the work that you're doing, the mission you're doing, is because of things that you have seen, experienced, you can tell stories. Even the people who are very quiet, you know, if you get them to the right corner and they want to tell you about what happened to them yesterday, they tend to be able to tell you exactly what it is that happens. However, even for you who does not see yourself as a storyteller, you need to know that it's a skill you must develop, especially if you're going to be fundraising. And fundraising is also in terms of just selling yourself as a personal brand. I know I'm doing scope creep here. I'm talking about things that I was not asked to talk about. But you're also fundraising for yourself when you're looking for a job. You're fundraising for yourself when you're trying to get a contract, or when you're trying to get a side job or something. You're fundraising for yourself. So you must be able to tell a bit of a story about yourself so that you can get somebody to support your effort. Most people do not believe, I think only Lydia here might know, that I am an extreme introvert. But I have been able over the years to build the capacity to go and speak at conferences, to go and speak at you know, very loud, very public spaces. It's not an easy thing to even speak to an esteemed group such as yourselves, for people like me. What happens is that after I finish speaking to a very public sort of environment, I need to then go somewhere and hide and recharge before I can be able to continue. But while I am there in front of people, I am not, nobody can tell, unless, in fact, most people will not believe that I'm an introvert. They believe that I'm an extrovert because of how I operate when I'm in public. So it is a skill that you develop over time. You have to get over the fear and the stage fright. I remember the first time that I ever had to get over stage fright was in the worst possible time. I was still working for government at the time. We were in Addis, and I was suddenly placed in a position where I needed to speak to several presidents from this continent. And I was in no way prepared. Like, I was not going to be speaking to them at all. There was nothing that I was supposed to be doing in that room apart from sitting and taking notes. And somebody said, "We have a young person here. Let's hear what he has to say on the issue." And me wearing jeans and t-shirt, I was made to stand in front of these presidents, and I had to get over my fear. And I think the first thing that I said to them is that, "Man, you guys look so serious. You're scaring the nonsense out of me." So they laugh, and the room temperature is regularized enough for me to be able to speak and put myself out there. One of the things that I've always said is that if you're going to speak in public and you're afraid, call out your fear. Talk about, say, "Hey, you guys, I'm really nervous," and then continue. What happens is even the room itself will help you to regularize and feel comfortable. But don't fail to go because you're afraid. Don't fail to try because you're afraid. You won't start out being a great storyteller, but you will get to be a very good storyteller over time. So practice makes perfect. Just keep doing it and you will see that it gets better.
Thank you. We have 3 questions in the chat. The first question is, how do you identify, build, and maintain a rapport with potential donors towards projects? Kindly give a practical example.
Okay. So one of the things that I do in my because my current position is that I must fundraise. It is part of my everyday job to figure out how to fundraise for my organization. One of the things that I do is that I am voraciously researching on the different places where I can get funds. I'm voraciously reading about different people and what their funding models are, and because of the fact that it gets hard over time, because so when we were $100,000 organization, where our annual budget was $100,000, it means that we were raising in shillings, 2 million shillings, 3 million shillings, $20,000 thereabouts. That was easier. Now, as a $2 million organization, I am trying to raise money in the hundreds of thousands of dollars at a time, because the amount of energy that you spend to raise $20,000 is the same amount of energy that you have to raise $200,000. So if I'm at our level, if I have to raise money, then I have to try and raise money at that higher level, which means that I have to research. Is number one. I have to understand what the pool looks like. I have to understand whose values align with our values. There are people who would give us $1 million that we will not take their money because of the fact that our values don't align, because of the fact that it will be so expensive to take that money that it will not be worth it. We have had an opportunity to receive money from a donor who gave us $100,000, but the amount of work, energy, pain that it took to raise that money, we had to write 13 versions of proposals, and then we had to spend the entire time reporting and doing admin work rather than actually doing the work that is on the ground. So it stopped making sense at some point because of the fact it was so uninspiring. So as a result, there are people who we know that we will not take their money just because of the fact that it will drain us more than it will help. So not all money is good money from a value systems perspective. So number one is I research very well. Number two is that I'm very, very consistent. So one of the best things that have happened is that if you're a really good storyteller, if you are pushing information and telling stories about the work that you're doing, a lot of times people actually gravitate towards you, because I'm sure you guys have heard that saying that says money attracts money, success attracts success, and so on. People like to be associated with things that are going well. So if you're doing the work and people are identifying, and you can get people to identify and connect with what it is that you do, a lot of times people will actually look for you so that they can actually give you the money to continue doing what you're doing, which is what we have attempted to be very, very good at. And then the other thing that we do is that as a rule, we don't cold call people. We don't reach out to people out of the blue and say, give us money. We attend functions where we can be introduced to each other, to them. We go for conferences, we attend events, we engage, and anybody that we engage with, we don't engage with them for purposes of fundraising. We engage with them for purposes of discussing how our missions align. If our missions align and you have money, you will give it to me, even without me asking. So the question is, how well do you tell your story? How well do you make sure that people know who you are and what it is that you're doing, and how you're doing it, and why the way you're doing it is working even well, and what impact you're having? For as long as you're having impact, people will want to align themselves with you, and that will help you. It's not a perfect answer, but it's a real answer.
Thank you. Another question is peace. This one seems like it's a follow-up on that. They're asking if you can be able to share the the findings of the research that you do for the organization that fund that you get to that you find if they can be able to fund you.
Well, so remember that organization. I'm doing this. I'm literally just Googling. That's what research looks like. It's spending time and actually reading about the different foundations and the different people who will support our mission. Now, I'm of course biased towards the people who are willing to support transparency and accountability. So even if I were to give you the organizations that I find that support transparency and accountability, if that's not what it is that you do, or if they support evidence-based data programs, if that's not what you do, even if I were to share my research, it will not work. Number two, Aki, there's no shortcuts. You have to go through the process. There is no shortcuts. You have to really go through the process and get really good at it. So don't be afraid of doing the work.
Okay. Another question is how can you initially fund your mission as a student, given that the initial financial muscle might be lacking both personally and within your social circle?
If you get 200 bob and what you like to do is to mentor kids in primary school, all you need is bus fare to go to that school. You can either walk there, you can take a border there, you can take a mat there. Not everything needs a lot of money to do. Start where you are with what you have. Start small, start doing things. Most people say, oh, I'm waiting until I have capital, then I will start. No. Both as a social entrepreneur, having built businesses, and as a nonprofit person who has done fundraising, it doesn't work. There is no substitute for starting with where you are, with what you have, the way you are, and building up from there. Because today you will be walking to that place where you're mentoring those kids, meaning that you're walking 10 kilometers to go to this school, and you're doing that. Tomorrow you will tell me the story of how you have been walking to that school and what you have been achieving, and I'll say, you know what, I like what you're doing. I'll give you 200 bob every day so that you take a border there. That's funding, because funding isn't $100,000. Funding is $1. Now I've given you fare. As you're telling that story, and then you say, by the way, I'm looking for a blackboard so that I can be able to talk to these kids even better, or I'm trying to create a booklet or something. Then somebody else says, you know what, I like what it is that you're doing. Here's a booklet. That's how it progresses. Before you know it, a few years have passed and you're supporting 30 schools.
Thank you. Another question here. Hello. Thank you for the insight. Would you kindly expound on what to do, on what to look for in a value alignment with donors?
This is what I look for. I look for, first of all, people who believe in transparency and accountability, because that's what I believe in. Number two, I believe that when I'm dealing with citizens and trying to build their capacity to speak to government, there are many directions that I could take. And therefore, I need to be flexible. I need to, sometimes it's as simple as this. You have planned to go to speak to people in the rural areas and tell them about what the functions of an MP is. And the day that you have organized the meeting, in fact, you called ahead, you organized the meeting, it's going to be held in a church. This is a true story, by the way. You've organized the meeting in a church. You borrowed it's a local church. You borrowed from the pastor so that you can be able to have this meeting. The chief is going to be there. The elders are going to be there, etc., etc. On the day, as you arrive that place, it rained in the morning. Farmers have to go to the shamba. They are not going to come to your meeting before they have gone to prepare their shamba. So they all go to the shamba and they tell you, let's reschedule. You have driven 3-4 hours to get to where they are. This is a true story. when it doesn't matter how your program was written, if the farmers have to go to the farm, that is where they will prioritize first, and therefore you will reschedule. So your program has to be there, flexible enough to be able to pivot and to change and so on and so forth. In our experience, then flexibility is one of the things that we look for in donors. If they're not flexible, then we don't want their money because it's just going to be a headache. These are the sort of things that you think about. So you think about, for me, these are the 5 things that I care about, and these are the 5 things that I consider to be important. So those 5 things, if you align with them, good. If you don't, watch a tuikai. We have had, even when we were extremely broke, around the time that I was giving my car out to a Shylock, I had been offered funds which I had said no to, for that reason, that you must make sure that your value systems align. Otherwise, you'll end up wasting a lot of your time just because you took money that was misaligned.
You were mentioning 5 things. You just mentioned one.
Did I say 5 things?
Yeah, you said 5, so I was doing taking notes.
I'm sorry. I don't know what I was going to say. It has disappeared.
Okay, so another question goes like this. Thank you for sharing your experience. If we are working with a team for a fundraising activity, how can we bring the team to the same page about communicating the mission, finding a donor, and other activities for a successful fundraising?
Get your stories straight. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Get your stories straight. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Make sure that you sit together, you're talking with each other, make sure you all are aligned, make sure you know what it is that you want to do, the impact you want to have, why you're doing what it is that you want to do. If you have differing reasons why you want to do the thing you want to do, then you pull them all together and you figure out a story that everybody can say one story. And once you have figured that out, then that's the one that you go with to speak to the outside world about. And if you do that, then it will work. Get your story straight, then repeat, repeat, repeat.
Thank you. I think one thing that is coming out clearly tonight is about stories. You need to tell your story. Sometimes, most of the time, an author usually say, if you never report it, it never happened. So it's part of telling the story is reporting and showcasing to the world what you do. Another question goes like this. Thank you for the responses. Could you kindly share on how to effectively communicate change and vision as a leader?
So the reason I have chuckled is because the kind of response that comes to mind is one of those textbook answers, and the ones that you get in books. For me, it's extremely simple. It's all about impact. Human beings, the way that we exchange information is by speaking to each other and by trying to connect not only to the head, which is logic, but to the heart, which is where feelings are. People buy things because of the fact that they feel something. People change their behavior because they feel something. They won't change their behavior because they think something. They change it because they feel something. Even some of the things that you have bought for yourself, if you really think about it, nowadays you try and give yourself logic of why you bought that thing. But the truth of the matter is you didn't buy it because you logified it. You bought it because it looked nice. It made you feel a certain way. It gave you a certain prestige, or it helped you to position yourself a certain way. That's why you bought it. But then after that, you'll start talking about its features, its values, and so on and so forth. How do you communicate change? You communicate change by communicating change, by saying, we started here, we ended up here, this is what we did to achieve this, and this is the benefit that we are achieving. This is the impact that we're having. It is keeping it simple. It is making sure that we understand this was the problem that you're trying to solve. This is what you did to solve that problem. this is the current results of where we are, and this is the impact that we have had. If you are able to communicate that, especially if you are able to use stories to communicate that, you will do well.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. I think that's what I was saying was a reply to the same question. As we keep on waiting, we still have some few minutes. I think five more minutes questions. I hope Kags, you are still you ate some good supper. You have enough strength to keep going.
I haven't.
Still allow.
I'm holding on to finish so that I can go and eat.
So that you can eat in peace without any tension.
Yes.
So members who are present today, thank you so much for attending. Just have some few minutes, allow some few more questions. If you have a question, you can text or you can raise your hand and we'll get you answered. As we wait for questions to come, or as we wait for the time to elapse, the attendance today is quite good. We have 59 currently people as participants, but the session we have only 40 that have responded. I think if you're not registered, please make a point of registering. There's a link that has been shared for you to do the same. We have Meningai present. We have a club from Ethiopia called quite difficult to pronounce, Abocha. I don't know whether it's a bocha or a bocher. It can be difficult sometimes. We have a club of Luke, abbreviation GL UK. I don't know whether it's from which UK this is. We also have people from Eldoret. We have Hurlingham. We have Kisumu. We have Langata. We have Mount Kenya Meru. Meningai has quite a good attendance today. We have Nairobi Central, Mutega North, we have Thika, Moto Mananasi, USIU, we have Youth Connect, we have CNC, USIU again, we have Kilifi, our neighbors here. Question has come in. How do you communicate failure of a project to a donor in the event that the expected impact is not met? Interesting question.
I want to say that is my favorite question of them all. I was born in the 844 generation. And the one thing that was done in the 844 generation is that failure was demonized and you are punished severely for failing. We were chapward. I don't know how many of you were chapward in school, but me, I was chapward very severely for getting wrong answers, for getting a mathematical calculation wrong, for failing to pass exams, all of these things. And as a country, we have really demonized failure. As a continent, we have really demonized failure. Failure is something to be demonstrated because of the fact that if you don't achieve something, you learn from it, and that means you get better at doing it better. In the nonprofit world, and certainly in the business world, failure is one of those things that often is punished. We have had to develop the courage to be able to say, this didn't work out. This is why it didn't work out. This is what we have learned for it not working out. And this is how we think it can now be done better. For a lot of the issues that we're dealing with, you cannot fail to have failure because of the fact that you're dealing with society, and fixing society is not a linear thing that I did this and therefore it definitely will work. If it involves human beings, it can have a chance of failure or succeeding and so on and so forth. So what I would advise you to do is this. have the courage to say, I failed. This is what I have learned. This is what we think we can do differently. And this is how we want to attack the problem, because the problem still exists. We tried that way, it didn't work. So we are now going to try it a different way, and we're going to work. The more open we have been about failure, and the more we have been loud about it, we have found it possible to get support and continue getting support for the things that, even those things that don't work out. I end that one by telling you a story. One of the first businesses that I ever invested in was a videography business. I was a very young man. It was a videography business in which we were shooting weddings. Peter is a photographer, so he may identify with this. We were shooting weddings, and we had grown over time until we have multiple computers. We had lights and a lot of razzmatazz that go into videography. On this particular day, we were invited to come and shoot the wedding at a church. So we were going to go to the church. So we had even bought new uniforms for our team. We had multiple cameras in different corners of the altar. So one on the left altar, one on the right of the altar, and one dead center. The one dead center was called camera 1. There were lights, so the bride and groom were going to be very well lit when they're doing in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit sort of thing. We were ready. We were prepared. It was the best thing we could ever do. This was our first wedding to actually do the best. So we finish the main ceremony, and we go to reception. We shoot the reception. Mwah! Great work. We go back to our office, and we are downloading the footage, and we are now looking at the footage, only to realize camera 1 was not recording. We set it nicely, but we forgot to press the button that says record. So we did not catch in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit the way we were supposed to catch it. Now, there's no way of repeating this thing. There's no way of calling the bride and groom and the priest and saying, come back and do that one again. There's no way of reenacting this thing, which means we failed. And the first thing that we wanted to do was to hide, because we know that camera 2 and camera 3 on that side, they caught glimpses of that bit. Then we can fudge, and then we can figure out a story to tell the client. My partner in the business, he said, let's just tell them. So we called them. I said, we have some news for you. We didn't shoot. We forgot. We just didn't press record. Of course, they were mad. They were very mad because this was the most important day. But then eventually they said, okay, so what can we do? We said, well, camera 2 and camera 3 got some of the footage. It just won't be as perfect as the others. Then they looked at all the other work that we had done at reception, at whatever it is. And then they decided, you know, the rest of it is so good that we can forgive, and they forgive us for the challenges. In fact, we had told them that we will do the whole wedding for free, so they don't have to pay us, so that then we are not in trouble. We know, at least we assuage that. They actually decided to pay us full amount, not penalize us at all, because we were honest with them after they had a moment to ruminate over it. What I'm trying to say is, if you fail in a project, be open, be transparent, be aggressively transparent about it. It always works out in the end. You may have to face a little bit of a turmoil, always works out in the end. In the nonprofit sector, we're not dealing with simple things. So failure is not the kind of thing that we demonize. Failure is the kind of thing that we celebrate and we talk about and we learn from. So that's why that is my favorite question.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I can totally relate with what you say.
Yes.
The last question, and then we close. Your knowledge is inspiring. Could you please share on how we anticipate risk in project implementation?
So my personal belief is that you can only anticipate risk up to a certain point. In fact, anybody who's ever tried to write a risk matrix, you realize that you write kind of the same things. You write political, economic, blah, 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 blah. A lot of time, the thing that goes wrong is the one that you could never have foreseen. So I say, yes, do try and think about risk as much as possible, but make a 30% allowance for the risk that you could never have foreseen, because there'll always be risk that you cannot foresee. Everything that you can foresee, you do mitigation for it, and you try and think very hard about it. If you're an optimist like me, it is even harder to see risk. Hopefully you have a couple of pessimists in your team who would be better at seeing the risk.
Thank you so much. This juncture, I think we'll close there. If you haven't registered, please do take your time and register. Kags, do you have 1 minute to slot in the last question?
Sure.
Thank you for these nuggets. How do you bounce back from failure?
You bounce back from failure by A, learning from it, B, talking about it and being open about it, and C, starting to try to fix whatever it is that you are failing in. So the moment you try and fix it, then you bounce back. But the more you stay and you analyze, so one of the things that people do is, of course, they demonize the failure, but the other thing they do is they overanalyze it and they over-lament the failure. It is important to ask yourself, why did I fail? And be very honest with that. It is important to ask yourself, what could we have done differently? It's important to analyze the failure so that you learn from it. But once you've learned from it, you create a plan and you start trying to fix the problem. So anybody who does, there are those people who say, imefanyika, let's move on, is wrong. You must analyze the failure and why it happened. And the answer to, people are asked the question, Peter, why did you do this? And you say, I won't do it again. That's not the answer to why I didn't do it. So you have to go into some level of detail in terms of just introspecting as to why did I do it? Did I do it because I was tired? Did I do it because I was feeling lazy? Did I do it because I was confused? I didn't have adequate knowledge. There was always a reason why you did something or didn't do something. So you go into a little bit of that and you avoid blaming others. First, you take responsibility yourself. And
Okay, thank you so much. I think we have no more questions, and I really appreciate you giving us your time today. Normally, for family men, this is the time to indulge with their people. Thank you so much for the privilege of having this evening.
big pleasure
like
be here.
Asante. I'd like also to appreciate the members, people who have attended the meeting today. It's quite a good attendance. We're really grateful for you also spending your time and getting these nuggets. I believe that the training has also been of great benefit to you. We have quite a good number of people who have registered. We have around 22 people who managed to register. Very many clubs have attended this. We have clubs from Kikuyu, Mupega, all the way from Merla, Malindi, Voi, Watamu, Mungoma. We have also guests. We even have Rotarians around with us here. Really grateful for you taking time and also listening to us. Indeed, there's more that you can be able to learn. This is just part of some of the training that we district is planning. And if you want any more trainings, please don't hesitate to